I don't know until we get to AGI, or even if we got to AGI, whether we would be able to be whether the automation would be making these types of, really the types of critical decisions we want them to make, right?
Right,
We
right.
want it to be able to say, but if you factor in this and factor in that, and if you look at this, and from our, because we believe that we know how to look at the world, and
Right.
if through our lens. I don't know that.
But that's the thing that makes me excited about, because I'm thinking, okay, we are now we're judging this creature, let's call it creature, as if it's a baby. It's a baby is just starting to talk. Of course, it's not going to be a doctor. It's just a baby, and we put tests to this baby. It's not going to be able to perform well, but it's going to grow into something. That baby. What? So if the teachers that we give to this baby are horrible teachers, we put it in the worst school with the worst horrible teachers, does it mean it's going to become a horrible person, completely ignorant? Sometimes the opposite. They rebelled, they learned, I'm talking about people. Would that happen with AGI? Would the AGI saying, okay, I receive all this information and I can see huge of it is contradictory. And you weigh me towards this and towards that. I'm going to stop listening to you, Wayne. I'm going to analyze it now without you and your input to see whether I can see some truth. And then in that process, the machine saying, you know what? The vegan wall is the best option you have. Can you imagine that happens? Welcome to Vegan Reflections, when I, Jordi Casamitjana, talks to another vegan about an article I wrote in veganfta.com. The guest of episode 6 of Vegan Reflections is Cheryl Allebrand. Cheryl is a managing consultant specializing in conversational AI who has been vegan for over 18 years. Cheryl is passionate about making technology work for us rather than the other way around. With a particular love for the Internet of Things, she aims to design solutions that lessen our dependency on screens while connecting us with our environment and each other in a meaningful way. While her opinions today are her own and are not reflective of her employer, her day job is as a senior digital consultant specializing in conversational AI and automation. She holds a Master of Science degree in Human-Computer Interaction Design from City University of London and did her dissertation on designing for voice assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, and Alexa. She has stated that she is vegan for all the reasons: animals, environment, health, nonviolence against humans, and because even after all these years, she can't find any good reason not to be vegan. Cheryl helped create a crowdsourced resource to help people find vegan dishes across Sweden. Cheryl holds dual Swedish and American citizenship and currently works in London, UK. Okay, thank you, Cheryl, for being the guest of episode 6 of Vegan Reflection. I mean, we're getting few now. We got 6 going, which I never expected that it would last that long. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
I am very well. I actually have known you for quite some time, and I remember when you first introduced yourself, you told me what you were doing. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but it had something to do with the technology, computers, and the users and the connection, all this. At the time, it felt to me a very niche and a very kind of isolated part of technology. Now everybody's talking about AI, artificial intelligence, the kind of thing you do. How does it feel just to be now at the front line of technology?
I think that it is making conversations, professionally a lot easier because suddenly everybody's interested, even I guess I would say outside of professionally as well. All of a sudden everybody says, "Ooh, I want to talk about this." So when you asked to talk about it, it wasn't a huge surprise. I mean, I didn't expect you to come to me necessarily, but yeah, I feel like it's what's on everyone's lips today. And there are so many misconceptions about what it can and can't do. And there's so much being said at such a rapid pace about its development, but I feel like the things that it can't do or the dangers or concerns that might be either not mentioned or completely blown out of proportion. So it's kind of swinging wildly both ways.
Right, right. And I saw in your LinkedIn page that I have it written here that you say that you like freeing people from the tyranny of screens. What do you
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
That is
Sounds dramatic. Sounds dramatic. But what do you
that
mean?
is I wouldn't call it my mission, but it is very much a part of what drives me, is that I want to actually make technology work for us rather than us working for technology. And if we look at the way that things have developed, I feel like technology's kind of been in the teething stage for too long, right? So there, where we had to do everything for it. Now it's doing some things for us, but it's still screaming for our attention a bit too much. And quite a lot of that is by design rather than as a fault of the technology itself. It's the way that it's being implemented to dominate our attention, to to call us to it and interact with it too much. It's not a Tamagotchi, right? I think that we should be using technology so that we don't have to do things in real life, and so that we still gain the benefit of having this extra information. So I very much believe in thoughtful connections where we connect things that need to be connected, not just everything for the sake of. But when we connect them, we try to add this intelligence so that it's doing things for us, and it'll let us know something that might be helpful. It doesn't just scream and say, look at me, how want to see what your friends are doing. Maybe if your friend is right beside you and you said that you want, or close to you, and you've said that you want to have those kind of alerts, then that's a good thing, right? But it's if you've chosen this and if it's going to be something that's going to enrich your life.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you are the perfect guest for this episode, because in this episode, as we do every time, we discuss one issue that I wrote about the month before. And this issue is veganism and AI, artificial intelligence. I wrote a long article. If people want to read it, go to veganfta.com. Then you go to the top at the article section. Then you scroll down, you'll see blogs. Click the blogs, and then you'll see many blogs there. And then you will see one that is titled Veganism and Artificial Intelligence and AI. And what I did is, basically speculate and how I think veganism might be affected by artificial intelligence, in positively or negatively. I have a conversation with ChatGPT and all these chatbots about veganism, which was very interesting. I'll do all these things, and I just basically wrote an article. As it's not going to be the first, it's not going to be the last. Many people will be talking about it, because if AI is going to affect everything, it's going to affect veganism too. And I just want to see what people think about and what you think about. But the first bit I talked about, and that's the one I would like to start with, is about the concept of intelligence, because we keep saying it, artificial intelligence, but I'm sure not everybody agrees what intelligence is. It's probably one of the most difficult questions to answer, what's intelligence. As a biologist, I have a very specific understanding of how biologists see intelligence. But I'm sure it's not the same than you. So how you look at it? Because, of course, my question is, even in your field, do everybody agree about what intelligence is, or what is it?
I would say there is, perhaps there's not one consensus across the field even, but I'd say that it even differs in terms of what's sort of marketing speak, what's techno speak, and what might overlap with or be confused with the way we use these words in combination in outside of the field, right? So yes, no intelligence. That's the first thing. No intelligence. But there are some things that we don't quite understand with the ways that machines are teaching themselves to learn. We don't quite understand how they're doing it. So is that a form of intelligence or not? Right? If we don't tell them how to do something, we just give them the goal. And then we, try to teach them or not that they've done it right or not. There's something there. There's a little secret sauce there that even the machines themselves aren't fully explaining to us.
So are you saying that you define intelligence by the mystery? So if you know how it works, it's not intelligence. You don't know how it works, that might be intelligence. Is that it?
That is interesting. Sorry, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. I would say that it's more along the lines of, if we think about it all in terms of automation, the intelligence would be the ability to cope with change to a degree, or to change itself.
Right.
So one of the things that I work with indirectly, or as part of different, when I'm redefining a process and changing the way we do things, I work with something called robotic process automation. It's sometimes shortened to RPA, and RPA is dumb. It's dumb. It is hands. So it can open up things. It can, receive emails. It can open up the email. It can, it can start up all kinds of things. But if something that it doesn't expect happens, it doesn't know what to do with it. You break it, right?
Right.
So, and that could even be this, as think about it like an Excel sheet, when it has a certain formatting for a date. And if you put in a date, if it hasn't had some sort of macro where it will translate it to another date, it just doesn't understand, right? That's the way that you have to input something in RPA. It's the same types of values in the same format as it expects, and you do it over and over and over and over and over again without any sort of change, right? Now, what I've been working in conversational AI uses a form of natural language understanding, which has been, I should say, at the lower end of what you started talking about, like with ChatGPT. So sometimes it's called narrow language processing, narrow NLP, and natural language processing. And that just means that you've got it trained up for a specific set of things, really. And you've been doing the training for the most part. I mean, it depends. There's a lot of gray area in here depending on different platforms and everything, but you have the ability to affect it. And when I use that, then any replies, like any answers that are needed, we have to write those. We're completely in charge of the responses. So you try to have something that understands the people who you're talking to and the subject matter that you're talking about as well as possible, so that they don't have to memorize a term or have a command like, this is what I say in order to get that. So we want it to feel natural. That's what's called natural language understanding. We want it to understand what we're asking for. But at this point, and this is where I'm going to jump over toward what you were talking about. At this point, I don't feel that it's quite safe in a business setting and in any sort of high stakes type setting to just allow this type of thing to respond for us, right?
Right.
Now, we can get into all the whys on that, but that's one big thing to understand when you're talking about, well, how can we use this, to if people are searching for answers about veganism, how might we use this? The thing that you need to remember right there is you don't know what it's going to say. And it might say something to you now, and it might say something to you in 5 minutes. It might say something to you that's different than what it says to somebody else. So, I think that we just need to understand that we don't have a lot of control over the output. So now now that we're starting to use these large language models, as well as the narrow ones, it's as part of either the tools or the platforms that we're using to increase the ability for the machine to understand what's being asked of it. But I still don't ever use the answers that are generated unless a person's been put in place first. It's been passed a human, right? Now, that doesn't make it infallible, because humans are fallible. And that's the second kind of thing that I want to warn about, is that if we start imbuing it with this idea of intelligence, right? We think that it's so smart because it's read so many more things than we would ever be able to read in hundreds of lifetimes, right? So you say, oh, but it's read all of this. That doesn't equal discernment. What it does, it's predictive text, right? So it's a lot of people, if they're saying these things, we expect that it's going to say this next, right? So it's predictive. It's not doing any sort of reasoning. So it doesn't understand what it's being asked. It understands what is being asked to the point of, how do I find a response that fits this? But that doesn't really understand. It's kind of like if you were to if you were to be on one side of a door and I'm on the other, you know Chinese, I don't. And you were to, write down a Chinese character, slide it under the door, and I look at it, and then I try to, do it myself. And then, I pass it back to you maybe, and you correct, this is where it's wrong, this is where it's right, and then you pass it back to me, and I try to do it again. It's sort of doing this. That's how it learns, is by seeing something and then seeing something again and seeing if it's right. That's really oversimplified, but
But makes me think that's how I learn English myself, because
Mhm.
we learn things in different ways, and
Right.
the language that you were born with, you learn
Mhm.
it differently than a second or third language. But in my
Right.
case, because I was an adult when I learned English, I remember every
Mm.
single word I speak now. I more or less remember the settings I learned it and how. And it
Wow.
was essentially not anybody teaching me the rules and appealing to my intelligence. It was doing exactly this:
Mm.
watching TV, watching
Mm.
context, trying to find if it was right or not, trying to guess it. If it make no sense, I got it wrong. So it was putting myself surrounded of conversations and trying to figure out the meaning without nobody telling me. And
Right.
that's how I got it in the end. And of course, I got perfection with time. But it makes me think that perhaps even if we don't plan it, if we try to create an intelligence base in language,
Mm.
we might end up having an AGI, which is this artificial general intelligence, which is what everybody's talking about, is the
Mm.
real proper intelligence, human-like intelligence, or
Mm.
more than human-like intelligence. What we don't have it yet, but perhaps the way to get it is through conversation with AIs, because we humans think so much in words that
Mm.
perhaps that's the way to. Is that possible? Is it going to get there?
Most of the people who actually build these things would say that the way that it's being built is too limited. Now, that's part of why you want to fence things off to make sure that they don't jump and, because all right. Sorry, let me take a step back. So right now what we're doing is we're saying, all right, it's got these limitations to it. What if I do this to it? What if I chain it to this? What if I start connecting these different pieces? So, that it only knows things that happened a couple of years ago. It's not what happened last night or this minute, right?
Mm,
But maybe news databases might know what happened this minute. If you connect these things together, then you can, perhaps get the right response, perhaps.
mm,
Um, so there are a lot of ways that we're starting to connect this raw feed almost into multiple processes to achieve something. And yeah, I mean, it can be good, it could be bad. I don't know if we'll get to AGI from the language models that we're doing today, but and they might not have the ability to evolve that far, but you can bet that people are working on more
mm,
different ways to build these. That's why all the different language models have different names. They're being built in different ways, and there could even be a complete, like outside of the form that we're finding is working right now. I'm sure that there are researchers getting quite close, if not, farther on something else that hasn't been released.
mm.
So you never know. I
Yeah,
forgot the full question you were asking about
no,
AGI, but
no, you answered it perfectly. But this makes me think about my first philosophical connection with veganism, because
mm,
I'm thinking, well, if that happens,
mm,
if we get an AGI, we get an intelligence that we can say, yeah, it's as intelligent as a human now.
mm,
Would that be bad for veganism? Would that be good? And I think philosophically speaking, I think, look, if something challenge supremacy in humanity,
mm,
supremacy is what has caused the problems of animal exploitation. People
mm,
saying we are superior, human beings are superior, either because we want to or because normally we are more intelligent than anybody else. And if that's challenged, that said, look, we built a machine. It seemed very innocent at the moment. It only copied conversations, and suddenly now is like you. That means you were not that superior. You were not that special. And also that means, and everybody else that you were looking down, all these animals, they've been evolving for millennia, no,
mm,
millions of years. Of course, they reach a level of intelligence that you've been ignoring and
right.
underappreciating. So it's a leveler. What do you think?
Mm. So right now, the way that you teach machines is by weighting things, WEIGHT, weighting things. So you would try to say, oh no, weigh this more heavily or weigh this less heavily, in making a decision. Now, ethically, morally, we as humans bring a lot of different weighting to different causes or different ideas in our life. We will have different philosophies. And, of course, everybody's going to think that their own is right.
Mhm.
And, for some people, you can help them uncover some of the fallacies that they might have believed, or you can help them uncover ways in their thinking that aren't serving them. Therapy's great, by the way.
Mhm.
But it still doesn't mean that, and we might have a different, of opinion on this, but we might not be able to say when it comes to something that's moral or ethical, that might not be able to be weighted the same way, or it might weigh more, right? But who says what's right?
Right. No, I agree. And I think we what I was speculating is not the current situation, is the future situation if
Mhm.
there is an AGI
Right.
happening.
But
But in the
again,
current situation, I get it that it
no,
doesn't.
no, no, right. So sorry, hold on. So the thing is, so machines are limited by the amount of by the information they're trained on, right? Right now, it's being trained on everything. We don't know because they won't tell us exactly what it's been
Mm.
trained on, but it's going to be trained on a lot of fallible and false information. It's going to be trained on people acting in really, as really bad actors, as we all do without meaning to sometimes. It's going to be trained on, the worst of humanity, the best of humanity. So who says what comes out on top? But
Yeah,
part of it is, you're only, so one, the idea, you're only as good as your training data.
yeah,
And I don't know right now whether once it's like more refined, like to the chat GPT type stages, whether they have put any weighting in terms of sources, as this medical journal should be considered more highly than the BuzzFeed article about that topic, right? I don't
sure.
know if they've done that weighting or not. But you can bet there's a lot more of these BuzzFeed type articles out there than there are medical reports in journals, right? And
Right.
especially highly, and a lot of those, sorry, I go off on more of a tangent, but a lot of the, like, let's say medical studies have been predicated in part on studies that we've now found weren't conducted rigorously, or weren't conducted in an ethical manner. They were supported by Coca-Cola, or whatever.
Right.
So even if you say, okay, well, this is, the scientific studies are saying this, but if they're all predicated on some faulty study underneath it, then you've got a lot of garbage that's being weighted heavily. So I don't know until we get to AGI, or even if we got to AGI, whether we would be able to whether the automation would be making these types of, really the types of critical decisions we want them to make, right?
Right.
We
Right.
want it to be able to say, but if you factor in this and factor in that, and if you look at this, and, from our, because we believe that we know how to look at the world, and,
Right.
if through our lens, I don't know that.
But that's the thing that makes me excited about, because I'm thinking, okay, we are now we're judging this creature, let's call it
Mm,
creature, as if it's a baby. It's a baby is just starting to talk. Of course, it's not going to be a doctor. It's just a baby, and we put tests to this baby. It's not going to be able to perform well, but it's going to grow into something. That baby.
mm,
What? So if the teachers that we give to this baby are horrible teachers, we put it in the
mm,
worst school with the worst
mm,
horrible teachers, does it mean it's going to become a horrible person, completely ignorant? Sometimes the opposite. They rebelled. They learned. I'm talking about people. Would that happen with AGI? Would the AGI saying, okay, I receive all this information and I can see huge of it is contradictory, and
So now,
you weigh me towards this and towards that. I'm going to stop listening to you, Wayne. I'm going to analyze it now without you and your input to see whether I can see some truth. And then in that process, the machine saying, you know what? The vegan wall is the best option you have. Can you
right.
imagine that happens?
So there's two things that are like two sides of the same coin there. So what you were describing there is very much the, this dystopian future that everyone's been, worried about, that we anthropomorphize the technology so much so that we say, okay, well, if we're using it as a slave to us, then someday it's going to, turn and say, but this isn't fair. Why do you get, all of these things and I've given them to you? Why should I do this for you? I'm going to just kill you. It makes life better because the planet is suffering because there's too many humans or because of the way that humans act. So it just makes sense to get rid of humans. Let's do that. Right. So that's the
Mm.
one. But on the other side, the one that was much more likely is this idea that right now we're training it, with sort of rules, right? And we're keeping it in check with different rules. So we have to think out what we're asking it to do or what rules we're putting in place. So if you just say, I want you to win at any cost, and this is what winning looks like, right? I'm trying to remember which. I know I'm totally fangirling about him too, and I'm forgetting which author, but he had this, like this paperclip principle, right? That if you tell it, just your goal is to make as many paper clips as possible, then what could that turn into? In the nth degree, it could just be a world completely filled with paper clips, and everything has been turned into a paperclip, in one form or another. It's been, so you do need to think about a lot of different things and try to give it these parameters, that winning doesn't just mean, doing something uninterrupted at all costs forever, that
Right.
you have to put some brakes on it. So I think that that's the bigger danger right now,
Right.
is that we don't know which things we have to tell it not to do, because there's so
Right.
much that this is common sense, or it's not able to do this, we think. But then because we don't quite understand how it's, fully developing and teaching itself, then there is that danger that, yes, we say, well, I don't need to bother to put this in because it can't do that, but tomorrow it can.
Yeah.
And you haven't thought ahead 2 steps and put that block in place.
Yeah. Yeah. But because I'm a kind of general optimist, I always think the best possible outcome. And I'm thinking, look, if you look at humanity, every time that has done something like that, looking at other creatures and trying to assess whether they're intelligent or not, and trying to, we are usually right. We anthropomorphize everything.
Mhm.
Everything is, we are the center of everything. So we
Mhm.
measure everything as if they had to be humans. We see a bee, we say, look, this bee is stupid because it doesn't speak Japanese. And yet this bee is super intelligent, indeed intelligent types,
Mhm.
because it's able to do things that we can't do. So
Yeah.
because we anthropomorphize, we're looking at this danger of AI in the same way. You're saying it's going to become a superhuman doing all the superhuman and stupidity things that humans always do. But
Mhm.
what if it becomes more intelligent than humans and transcend human stupidity? It's no longer what we having now. We're having is a replica of human intelligence at the moment, but it breaks it and becomes another type of intelligence that doesn't care about humans anymore, but doesn't mean it's going to hurt humans. It just cares more about everyone. So, and
But
then
if it
realize
makes
there might be a way to get the humans happy and everybody else is happy. And
Yeah.
perhaps that's maybe I recommend the vegan world.
That's best case scenario, right? I mean, we want it to solve the problems that we are not smart enough to solve, right? So yeah, ideally we will be able to help steer it in that direction, and hopefully it will agree with us that it's better not to destroy. But I mean, if you look at a lot of invasive species where people decide that they want to, or invasive, let's say, plants that's choking out one type of plant, or that's not native to a region, and then all of a sudden the animals can't survive on it, and then we make the decision to go in and remove them. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't make sense to go ahead and remove us.
Yeah, but you see, that is a good example, because when we use this concept of invasion of species, and we say, look, we put this species in this ecosystem by mistake, and now look at the disaster. This animal is going to sting because of the, but we still use it or look at it from a human point of view, because we concentrated in the animals we like and the ones that we have favorite. if we look at it from the ecosystem point of view, it doesn't care whether the new species came naturally by migration or by humans. It finds its balance, and everybody finds its niche in ecological niche. When a species disappear, and things others triumph, and that's nature, and the balance is restored. If we're looking from a human point of view, we would prefer these species. We don't like those. Then we see either this is a good ecosystem or a bad ecosystem. But I think in the end, nature always wins because it finds its own balance, even if we don't like that balance because it's not the plan we have. But when talking about what you're talking about, when I asked ChatGPT about veganism, I was expecting to find what you said. I was expecting to find a machine that's been trained with so wrong information in a carnivore world where everything is telling you you can exploit animals and veganism is a ninja in a fashion that doesn't count. I expected to find that average human, because if it's learned from the average amount of information of the average human, should be that average human I normally talk in the street. And I found a much more vegan-friendly response. Somebody that understands better veganism more than the average human. Somebody that see the nuances better, so it has a better understanding. So that surprised me because made me think, I have conversation even with vegans that they don't have that well understanding of veganism. And yet this machine has received information from carnies more than from vegans because there are more carnies in the world than for vegans. How is that possible? So isn't me just hallucinating in the sense that I'm feeding the answers? I'm saying questions in such a way that he feels that he needs to answer to a vegan because I'm revealing that I'm a vegan. So it tries to please me. And if I had the opposite, if I said I'm a carnivore, I hate veganism, he would have given me different answers. Or is it true that there is some understanding, the machine is able to understand all the sides and make a judgment?
No. I mean, I can't say definitively no, because even the people who are building this don't fully understand how it's working, but they are all in agreement that it doesn't understand, it's predictive still. So there is plenty of information out there online that it would have been trained on about how, about veganism. And there very well could be something in the way that you were prompting it. And, and I don't know how many times you tried, let's say, asking the same question or asking it slightly differently to see if you were getting any difference in your responses.
I have tried several times. They're always positive in that regard. So they always show that understands veganism. But the big difference was between GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. I think GPT 3.5 did make many more mistakes. And then, especially when I use it with Bing, that means it's connected to the internet. That means it's able to check things directly. And I think one of my conclusions in the book is that in the article is that perhaps we've been training it without realizing it, in the sense that we vegans are very vocal digitally. So we've been defending veganism more than carnism has been defending itself, because carnism is the ideology that by default, so doesn't need to be defended because everybody gets it. You don't even learn how you learn it, but in the school, there's a carnist message gone there. And it's not explicitly defended. And because it's not explicitly defended, it's missed in the digital realm. While veganism, that we say, this is veganism, this is how we define it, that's easy for a machine to learn and to find and to search and to understand, but a diffuse dominant ideology that is not taught and therefore not written either in books or in online. And I think somehow,
how can you argue with but bacon? I mean, that's pretty.
Exactly. So that's what I think. We are an advantage here because, okay, let's assume that it's not learning. It's not going to get an AGI. It's not going to get intelligent. It's just repeating. It's just very good at pretending to be intelligent. But yet people are going to use it to ask questions. So we still want to have the right answers. We don't want, if we want to build a vegan world, we want AGI not to give arguments against veganism. And how you do that? Well, if you could train it to do those answers, that would be better. Perhaps what we've done without planning it. We've been training it because we've been talking more. And if we keep doing it, if we keep interacting with AGI, especially when it starts learning from these interactions, and we keep getting the vegan message, perhaps it will become more veganized in the way it approaches. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, remember, again, we're not at AGI. We don't know if we'll ever get to AGI. But yeah, I mean, I would say it wouldn't hurt if we understand, the way that things have been trained, right? And it's on the amount of data that's given to it, and this, that what's in the data. So yeah, it's not going to hurt to go ahead and be activists, even in that weird online space where, to some degree, you end up preaching to a robot. I
But
mean, obviously.
how different is this from an outreach of a stranger? This is something you meet somebody in the street, you talk about veganism, you don't know much about this person, you do your best. This is something you just happen not to be a person. And how that information is going to end up in the brain of the person and what is going to be doing there, or in the machine brain, we don't know.
So I think it would be good to bring this back to what practical things we can do now, and how we can use this now. I mean, I'm not saying, I feel like we've explored the like the possibilities. I don't want to say to the nth degree, but we're in a space where neither of us know, and nobody knows. So it's not even like, well, if we get a better expert, no, nobody knows yet. In fact, even the experts, have it. Things have changed so rapidly that even the experts didn't expect them to change so quickly. So, there could be something tomorrow that's announced that we've achieved AGI, and by then this podcast is out of date. But I mean, that's truly the pace of change at this point. But if we think about the way that people are using, this generative AI, it's very much to go ahead, oftentimes to influence people now, in the here and now. So if you look at the way that it's being used, very much in terms of marketing and content creation, because it allows, I don't want to call it necessarily individualized personalization, but personalization to different groups. So you could take a text that you've written today, right? And you could feed it in and say, write this to somebody who's a hardcore carnist. How would I explain this to them in a way that they would be receptive to it? Not using those exact words, but you could also, for different for people of different reading levels, right? Or in the style of. So if there's someone who writes in a way that you find very compelling, and that's the style you want to emulate, go ahead and have it, sort of rewrite it, edit it in that style. And it's getting fairly good, depending on how much training data it has on that individual. It's getting pretty good at that. So I think that we can go ahead and use this to better refine our arguments, perhaps. You can use it almost like a sounding board for practice, in a way, to see what types of things that might, you could even say, what arguments would you have against this, or what's, I don't want to say what's missing, but you can play around a lot with the way that you're asking it to do things, and you can, feed the same, sort of whatever output back into it, and change maybe a bit what you've asked, or ask it to check, did you really do this, or what didn't you do? And it can come with more information, or it can refine it further. So sometimes it's like these 3 turns, even with the same question or the same content, in order to refine it to better content. So again, I would never want to say, okay, if my goal is to promote veganism, I'm just going to hook up, like I'm going to create an app, and generative AI can help you create an app right now already. So you could basically have it create an app for you, and you just have it connected in there to answer responses that, if, say, it could be like a ask me anything, of a vegan ask me anything. And if it were the one giving the responses, then you don't know what you might be working against yourself at this point. But you could, sort of ask it what all of the questions are that people have about veganism, or what the top questions are people have, and then the next, and you can go ahead and try to work on your responses to make them more compelling, and even to understand that there might be things that people out there are asking that we're not always aware of. I mean, I know, again, it's been over 18 years since I went vegan, and I don't pay a lot of attention to what people are asking outside of the conversations that I'm having with people. And already they know I'm vegan by the time they're asking me a question. So they're going to be constrained in what they ask me. They don't want to offend me, usually, not everyone, but so people could have questions that they don't voice to us.
Yeah.
that we're not aware of. But a lot of people are very open with the internet and ask for all kinds of freaky things we didn't know about. So we could use it to help improve our outreach if outreach is your goal.
Yeah, because in the article, I speculate of thinking, would these chat GPTs become the ultimate outreach because of this? Not because how good is in answering the answers. The question is because people might be more freely asking questions that they would not ask to vegan. And the conversation might be more honest from that point of view, or less barriers between the non-vegan and the vegan. If they
But
want to know
again,
about veganism, they'd
remember,
rather get the machine to answer the question. But whether the answer will be the right one,
this is what I'm saying. You can't,
yeah,
you don't control the output
yeah.
in using these generative AI models. But if you were to create something where this is like, your content, you can go ahead and use it as a tool to help you generate the content that you want to have there, so that it will, even if you have like a question space there, or like a Q&A or FAQ, that the answers are always going to be answers that maybe ChatGPT came up with and you were happy with it,
Yeah, yeah.
and you went ahead and just put it in there. But you want to be in control of the answers, because
Well,
otherwise it's answering something that you might not stand
yeah,
for.
yeah. But I'm thinking more kind of looking ahead when most of the basic problems are already solved. But I think, for instance, from a training point of view, when you're trying to train yourself to be an outreacher,
Mhm.
I think it's already useful to say, okay, now you pretend you are from this religion and we have a conversation and see how different is that conversation if it's from another religion. And then you might realize, I never thought about this. I never thought
Yes.
about this argument. And because I'm not from that religion, how would I think about this? But the machine knows more about the religion than I do. So it's able to reach to the information that I'm not able to read. And so from that point of view, yeah, it might help us to train as outreaches and to produce content as well, because obviously it's easier to produce images and videos. You don't have to be that experiment with those things. Part of the machine, what it does for you is produce things that you have probably you would have needed a year of education about how to learn to do
Yeah.
that.
Or
That
fun
means,
games or videos, or
yeah,
there's so much now, when it's not just the chat type output, but
right.
generating pieces of art and generating video, and so many things that you would have had to have a whole studio of people working on. You would have had to have expertise. You would have had to have a huge budget. There's a lot now that, at least for the moment, until there's some sort of better copyright laws out there,
Mm.
that the underlying works it's been trained on, that they get supported, and that that it costs to make these things. If we ever end up there, for now anyway, you could use it to create a game about veganism that's
Mm.
catchy, or a song about veganism. And even if you're not the best singer, it can help improve your voice, or it could sing it in a different voice. So there's just things are happening on the daily right now in terms of improvements in the content space that's not just written content.
I'm already doing myself. So I wrote an article last week, and the image I created through AI. It was easier to create it that way than just to spend some time looking for the right image. So
Mhm.
I'm already using in that regard. And I think from a creative point of view, people are excited about it because they're getting free access that before perhaps that was possible, but not only accessible to some people. Now, the general public have access to all these tools, and it's going to be multiplying because they're competing with each other to see which one is better. So overall, I think that will make it easy. We will have to relearn the skills. So rather than completely obsolete, we might have to learn how to prompt properly, how to ask
Yes.
question properly, and that will be a new world
It's
to
already a
explore.
role. That's already
Yeah,
a role out
yeah,
there.
I'm
Exactly.
sure. And we amateurs, we don't know that well how to prompt compared with possibly professionals that they have
It's
been looking into this.
practice. Yeah, it's like right now it's all trial and error at this point. Well, there are some general rules we're picking out, but yeah, a lot of it is very much trial and error. You see what you say, and then you can start to pick out patterns and how to refine it.
Yeah. And in the article, I also write about the other things that we're just talking about, that not just the conversation aspects, but also things that might benefit the idea of vegan world, build this vegan world where there's no animal exploitation, advances that might reduce animal exploitation in general. And there are things that already happen. For instance, I talk about phytochemicals. The phytochemicals are these molecules that you find in plants that are beneficial for people's health and often are the responsible of why vegans are healthier than others. But people don't quite understand how they work and don't know how many they are. And there's a company in America that is using AI to try to correlate each phytochemical with beneficial results when people eat them and things like that, and learn about this. Or could be technology to replicate or to create vegan alternatives to things that they don't have quite a vegan alternative yet. And AI might find a way to replicate those feelings and sensations some people find is the same thing. So that's from a diet point of view. Or even veganic farming, regenerative veganic farming, which is existing, but people sometimes say, well, the yields are not very good, it's very time consuming. Well, perhaps AI can improve in yields and can improve in the way things are, the vegetables are harvested. So to minimize even more the number of accidental kills, perhaps a robot that can find a way to
Well, there's the
harvest.
machine vision already. If
Yeah,
you could have something at the front of the till or the harvester that is seeing, let's say, the field mice scurrying or whatever, is there from a vantage point that, let's say, a driver wouldn't,
right.
then yeah, you have a possibility, or even of, I don't know, sending out some sort of sonar waves or something, in front of it that mice wouldn't like and
Yeah.
make them run away from it. I don't know, all kinds of things.
And even I even imagine that in the most veganic of all the AI fields, there might be robots that they see caterpillars and they will pick them up and put them in another plant. They don't even kill that one. They just selectively relocate them without harming them. That is
Yeah,
technically possible. So
these giant harvesters aren't good for
no,
either it's not good for the soil or the earth, or in the way that they're being run, and they're on fossil fuels and all of that. Yeah, so these already aren't a great way to do it. It's just a cheaper way to do
right,
it because we don't have to pay for the damage we're doing, the way that capitalism has set things up for us.
right.
But yeah, there are some really great I think it's called the Tiny Robot Company or the Little
Yes,
Robot Company.
yes, yes.
They
They do
they
that.
they do yeah, they already not they don't necessarily pick off caterpillars,
No,
but
they're
they do go
destructive.
in. They have very specific goals. Each
Yeah,
they have a different name, and they each do something that's less destructive, as you say.
yeah, but we can reform them into making benign, because these ones, what they do is they kill selectively the
Mm,
animals or the plants, the
mm,
weeds selectively, as
mm,
opposed to spray a herbicide. They just remove the herb. But I think you can
mm,
just use the same technology in a positive way. You don't kill anyone. That's the rule. You can't kill
mm.
anyone. You just have to relocate it in 5 ways around. But then there are even more, I think, because these are, we're talking about science fiction now, but there are more feasible things more closer to us that can be done, which is, for instance, animal testing. There is a lot of work done in trying to find alternatives to animal testing. There could be microchips, but I think computer models is one of them. And
Mhm.
AI could really go into town with this. They can just find ways to predict how molecules will work on a human, not on an animal, a human,
Mm.
much
Yeah.
better than we have been doing so far. And if
Yes.
it's done so well, we might get rid of all the animal testing altogether. So that is a very interesting aspect of it, I think. What do
Mhm.
you think?
No, absolutely. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. The thing that I was thinking about while you were saying it is there have been so many studies showing how ridiculous it is to do animal testing in the way that it has been done,
Mm.
but people still do it, and I don't understand why. So there is this, yes, you can say that you could do, you could find a new way to do something, but unless it's that, like, so even some of the things, the arguments against animal testing are still cheaper, and I don't know if they're just not as trusted, or if they're just, I don't know why, like why China requires animal testing to sell something in China. Even a
Right.
company like Dior doesn't do animal testing outside of China, but then if it's going to be sold in China, then it has to do animal testing because
Yeah.
that's the law there. So yeah, I was thinking, yes, there's the what's technically feasible, what's technically possible, finding new ways, but then there's the whole convincing the entire system to
Yeah. Yeah.
change.
I agree. And it's a political issue at the moment, but it's also an industrial issue. There are companies that survive from animal testing and they will do lobbying the governments to be sure that no replacement comes. But again, if there's another company that is competing with this one more effectively that produce alternatives and they win the commercial battle there, and the politics also become an economic element, they become cheaper to do it alternatively, at one point, the critical mass might change and suddenly you have a political change. Yeah, that means all these changes that never happen just with technology. It has to go with society changing at the same time and politics. And they're all connected because you get the right politician when the society produces the right type of people. If you can't get the politician that sprouted from nowhere, they have to sprout from society. So in my case, well, I think we need to get a lot of people vegan because some of them might become politicians, that some of them might pass laws that make it easier to move from the old ways to the new ways. The decision makers are the ones I'm talking about, whether they are economically or politically. These are the ones that decide. And if everybody agrees in doing one way, but decision makers agrees in doing it another way, we don't advance. So how you get the decision makers to change their way? Either you replace them with new ones, and where this comes from the general population. So we can't design these things socially. You just can hope that the more people thinking like you exist, the higher the probability that the right one will be in the right place. It's the only thing we can do because it's too many variables and too many people around. But that's what the whole idea of building the vegan world. You don't build it from a designer point of view and a blueprint. You build it by increasing the probability that the decision makers of the future will do the right decisions by increasing numbers. That's the only thing.
Or you do really individualized campaigns with the help of your chat GPT at the people who are decision makers
True.
now.
That is true. That is also possible. If there is a way to have to ask the AGI and say, find a way to influence the influencers, find a way to change the minds of the decision makers without the need to change the social makeup of the population. And suddenly it responds, yeah, there is this way. And who knows? Perhaps nobody ever thought about this. Of course, that opened the doors to the risks. And then in the end, I think everything will be the pros and cons. And I've seen through my life already technological advances that they all started with the same idea of people really excited about it, people really terrified about it. Things find its balance. There are good things that come from it. There are bad things come from it, but none of the catastrophic scenarios become a reality, or at least so far. So I'm optimistic with AI as well, because I know there's a lot of people that has existential crisis. They're thinking about this super intelligence human machine that will destroy the humanity Terminator style. And I think that's the same idea that people were thinking about when they discovered social media, or when they discovered the internet, or when they discover electricity, or the printing press.
You do see the sort of societal changes that haven't always been so positive that have come from social media, right? I mean, there've been a lot of positives, but because of we have humans in the equation, it's not just the social media and the way and the algorithms that are used to feed in people information. Yes, that those have turned out to be problematic because of the way they interact, or that we as humans react to what we're being fed. So we have to think about that, both in terms of what are you feeding the algorithms, but or the AI, but we also have to think about the human factor and what we're being fed.
But in the end, I think it's all about humans, in the sense that it's a tool. And either you use it right, you use it wrong. You have people using it wrong, you have wrong results. You have people using right results. And of course, we humans haven't evolved that much. We're still the same people with the same problems, the same issues. And every time there is new technology, everybody panics, but it's the same thing. The good people will that use it properly, the bad people end up not. But we haven't really got to that existential position where we got completely wiped out, because it's going to be always good people that will try to stop that. So that's why I'm optimistic. I think, it will be bumpy, because, social media is not that good. But veganism will be in infancy without social media. Pre-social media, veganism existed for millennia, but was so niche, so unknown. The word vegan wasn't even understood by most people. Social media gave us something, some negative things as well, but gave us something. So I think AI might be the same. So there will be very bad things that come from it, but it might be very good things that come as well. And if we are going to be in this world and want to build a vegan world, we can just ignore it and look another way. We have to use it. If it's out there, let's use it. If we have to understand how it works, let's understand it. If we find ways to get the vegan world sooner through AI, don't go ahead. Don't be afraid, because that's going to be good. And if even in my worst possible scenario, if AI takes control of humanity and says we're going to take over, I'm still thinking perhaps they're going to do better than us. So why panic? Why panic?
Yeah.
They might just still get the vegan world, not through us, through them. Who knows? But that's my general optimist thought. But what your general, because we're getting to the end, what your general conclusion about?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I want to make sure that because I named some of the dangers, but I want to make sure that we do point out that right now, the results that are coming back, it's a confident liar. So
Right.
even if you ask it for its sources, it can sometimes make up sources that look quite plausible. So it's a lot of work to determine what's the truth. And I know that humans are lazy, and it's impossible to, is particularly when you ask for a source and it will lie to you and make up a source, right? It's impossible to fact check everything. So I just wanted to underline that fact and reiterate it, that, yes, we can use this tool, and we can try to use it as a tool, but we have to be very careful about what we believe. And that's one of the problems that we've seen with social media, is that people believe a lot of things that aren't true. And right now, this sort of targeting is happening. People are using ChatGPT and other things of its like to create targeted things that might not be true as well. So, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. It's just like, almost anything out there. But I do want us to be aware that we are going to have a tendency, because of the way we've been trained, on using things like Google for the past 20 years, even if not all our lives, 20, yeah, more than 20 years, where it's built on information that you can go check the source, and then you start to determine which sources you can sort of investigate less deeply, and where that truth might lie, that balance lies. But right now, with the responses that we're getting from ChatGPT and other things of that nature, that's not the old rules don't apply. And I just want to make sure that people understand that.
Yeah, and I agree. And I have to say, I tested several times, and yeah, there's so much information is wrong. And I was thinking, well, am I right? Perhaps I'm going to be out of the job now because it's going to be right for me. And then I realized, no, because you still have to spend so much time checking the facts that is not saving you time if you ask them, write this for me. What it gives you is ideas you never had before. It gives you, searching might be different, but you learn a different way to search. But time-wise, it's not enough to say, well, it's going to replace writing now. No, it's not. It's going to be, you're going to change it, but it's not going to replace it.
But there are clickbait sites out there right now that are using it to write stories. They've been using things that were less advanced before now, but there is a lot of just automatically generated stories that are complete fabrications out there.
Yeah, and that might be the case, but it will be then somehow distinction between the real thing and the right thing. The good artist, the good painter.
You're not competing with a, you're not writing for a clickbait site. So you're not out of a job, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and a painter that is worrying out, or an artist, I'm out of job. Don't worry, because you get better now. You have pressure not to be mediocre, because they can do good things. Now you have to produce better things. And therefore, that might actually change the way all these professions, they feel they're in danger to disappear, but not eliminate them. That change them. They become a different thing, and people might become able to tell the difference at one point. We can now, perhaps at one point we can. So I think in general, as you can see, I'm again an optimist. In general, I think, yeah, we will have to change. There's going to be challenges there. But overall, I can see that we recognize the dangers. If we find ways to overcome them properly and to look at the issue, I think overall we won't be losing. We just be at the worst in the same situation that we're now. So
yeah. You did ask me in general, am I an optimist or a pessimist about these things? I am cautiously optimistic. I'm sort of in that. I see how we can use it and the good that can come out of it. I'm very aware that it's also being used for bad. But like you said, we've survived these things before. It's never, whatever response I get from ChatGPT, whether it cites its sources or not, it's never going to make me not vegan.
Right.
So, it depends on lived experience to a degree, but then there's going to be people coming up who won't have lived experience. So it could come up with some really compelling reasons not to. I've never found a good reason not to be vegan, but it
Well,
could.
if it does, you better will learn it first than the
Yeah.
carnists. So we can have an argument against it. Well, that's it. I think we just got out of time now. So that was a very interesting conversation. I really
Thank you.
excited. It's a subject that really excites me because everybody's talking about it, but also because I like technology and I like these sort of things. And I like mixing veganism with everything. And so that's perfect. So I think we did touch a lot of interesting elements that I never expected at the beginning of the conversation. So that was very good. So, well, thanks very much for all your expertise on this issue. And I hope I'll see you again and talking about other things.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.